Welcome everybody. Welcome to our session today with Kelly Wendorf. I'm Toby Herzlich from Biomimicry for Social Innovation. I think folks are joining our call. We're really happy to have you all here today. And welcome to everybody who's joining. As you're joining, just so we have a sense of who's here and who's with us today, put your name in the chat and tell us where you're from. And if you're new to Zoom and you're not sure how to do that, you can just take your cursor and scroll it to the bottom of your Zoom window, and you'll find a place that says chat. And if you click on that, you'll open up the chat window. And there we go. And Kelly, I'm having some technical problems with my chat. So can you tell us what you're seeing as people who are—
Absolutely. We've got Lori Wallace from San Diego. Hello. Jess Peabody. Hi, Jess. Hi, Toby. Stephanie Earle from Goodyear, Arizona. Margot, Southern California. Gloria Rivera, Detroit. My sister is delicate today. I hope I survive. Hi, Toby, Kelly, and all.
Everybody should be able to see the chat now. Just kind of get a sense of if you've got friends here, if you know folks, notice where people are coming in from. In these times, we don't get to come together personally, but we get to extend our web quite far around this world. It's one of the benefits of this time. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Good.
Austin,
I think we have dozens and dozens of people who've registered. I know that some folks are new to Zoom, so one other piece of tech support for Zoom is we encourage you to be in gallery view for this meeting. In this case, we're not going to be able to see all of your faces, but I want you to be able to see both Kelly and both Kelly and me for this conversation the whole time. So the way you do that, if you're not already seeing both of us, then please take your cursor and go all the way up to the right-hand corner of your black Zoom screen and click on that. If it says speaker view, you click on that and you just get one of us. You want to click on where it says gallery view, and then you'll see both of us. So hopefully that works. And good, awesome. So again, my name is Toby Herzlich. I'm the founder of Biomimicry for Social Innovation. BSI is a platform to gather together folks who are interested in translating nature's intelligence into practices and principles for evolutionary leadership. We do that in a lot of different ways. And I'm so happy to welcome my friend and colleague and partner in the work of reshaping and transforming our world, Kelly Wendorf. Hi, Kelly. Good to see you. Kelly is the founder of EQUUS. She's also the author of this awesome book, Flying Lead Change. And she is somebody who's touched my life in deep ways over many years of friendship and of working together. Every time I'm with you, Kelly, our conversations take me to a place that is both deeper and wider. And the things I'm struggling with trying to figure out about how to be a human being tend to sort out in ways that they hadn't before. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And Kelly, in addition to being an amazing writer and storyteller, I just want to let folks here know who don't know you, that you do a lot of other things as well. You're a facilitator of groups who come to your ranch to do work together with you and with your equine herd. You're a master coach. You're a horsewoman, and you tend and care for acres of land in New Mexico on this land we share that is Chewa Pueblo land in its origin. I want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here with us. It's kind of amazing that you even have time for this conversation. So we're pleased to have you here. I also want to let folks know that you may see Megan Delgado on your screen. Megan is here in the background as tech support. If you have any issues, please chat Megan individually. You'll see on your chat screen, if you're new to Zoom, you can chat to everyone. You can chat to just Kelly or just Megan or just me, although I won't be able to see it. My chat box is black. But if you have any problems, technically connect with Megan and she can get you sorted out. Okay. Well, friends, our purpose today is to introduce Kelly's brand new book to the world. It's not even out yet. This is our first view of it. And to build some connective tissue among the communities that we've gathered for this conversation. It's also the launch of a new series from Biomimicry for Social Innovation. We're calling it the Voices of Nature Author Series. And Kelly, I want to thank you for this inspiration. We were talking about Kelly's book and how I could help her get it out into the world. And we came up with this idea. It's sort of a crowd support for birthing new ideas out into the world at this really essential and transformative time. And what I'm learning from Kelly and other women I know who are authors putting out amazing books right now is that it is no longer the case that you put all your time and energy and heart and soul into writing a book and then you're done. You actually have a lot of responsibility around self-promotion. So as Kelly and I were talking and I was learning the dimensions of that, I thought, we know how to come together to help each other birth something into the world. Let's get our broader network together to do that for you today. And then there are other women who could use that support too. I'm also part of a network called Women Leading Change, and we've been supported with some funding from the Novo Foundation. So this is in partnership with BSI and the Novo Foundation and Women Leading Change and EQUUS, and all of you to have this conversation, learn some things together, and birth this book into the world. Kelly, what else would you say about our purpose, why we're here?
Yeah, you said it so beautifully. You know, Toby and I just have endless hours of conversation in the good company of mountains and trees and rivers. And we've often said, wow, we could just sort of share this conversation with others, or this space of conversation with others. And so it's in that spirit of something that has always been for many years, right, Toby? This space of conversation and sharing new ideas and provoking each other further beyond where we were originally in our mindsets and our heart states. So yeah, thank you.
Good, you're welcome. So most of this time will be conversation between Kelly and me. I have a bunch of questions and we'll just see where this goes. You folks who've gathered here for this, if you have other questions or other things you'd like to ask, please put those thoughts in the chat, and we'll try to save some time for that. And again, Kelly and Megan, I'm going to rely on you for tracking that a little bit.
Sure.
Shall we jump in? Okay.
Yes, and I'm aware I'm a little nervous, and the reason I'm a little nervous, I've done so many interviews, but this is an interview with Toby, and Toby, you know, you can't fool Toby. You cannot, she is incisive and clear. And so I just feel like, ooh, I'm going to be on my game today. So I'm ready.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, this book is not yet released into the world. So people are just seeing it, hearing about it for the first time. This book will be published, I think it's a week from today or a week from yesterday, October 13th. Yeah. I'm guessing that people are curious about the title. I showed this to my mom yesterday and she's like, well, what does that mean, Flying Legion? And we will get to that. But I'd like to kind of meander and let that explanation of the title emerge. I want to start with some other things. Let's start with what you're weaving together in this book. It's about your work over decades, working with, learning from, and with horses. It's also about a deep personal connection you have with the natural world and nature-based intelligence. It's also about contemplative practice and your many, many years of that. It's also about both traditional wisdom and neuroscience. So there's a lot that's woven together in this book. You are bringing forward the voice of nature, these timeless, essential voices. And this book is really about being human.
Right.
I just want to read one line from the very early part of the book. This is Kelly's words. The natural world has taught me more about being human than any person could. And the precious company of indigenous elders from around the world taught me how to translate those invisible teachings of nature into practical applications of daily life. So, Kelly, can you start by sharing how these elements of your story weave together, and who might get value from reading this book?
Well, let's start with that piece. Who might get value? I use the term leadership really broadly. If anybody relies on you in any way, I consider you a leader. So if ideas rely on you to be birthed, then you're a leader. If you take care of a family, you're a leader. If you run a nonprofit or you volunteer, you're a leader. So really anybody who feels inspired to make a difference in some way in the world, whether it's small acts of kindness or grand scale effects on the world, I would say this book is for you, because it's really about, as you read, Toby, about being human. How do we be deeply, deeply human? We've been taught a lot about what we're supposed to be, or what we should think, or how we should behave, or how it should look. But that's kind of a trance, and there's something more deeply authentic that is calling to all of us now, if we're going to thrive in these times. I pulled together all these elements that are seemingly separate, but really they're not, because it's about just the basic physics of how things work. So the sun rises, the sun sets, the seasons come. The leaves fall off the trees. This is a certain physics that is a part of existence. Neuroscience comes in because oftentimes it's interesting to see how those physics are not just a phenomenon that we notice, but there's actually an inner working to those physics that we are a part of, our bodies are a part of, and how our bodies respond to those natural elements. And how we change as human beings in response to those elements. So neuroscience is a wonderful way to validate and engage with the way that we learn and the way that we become. And like I said in the book, the indigenous wisdom and the deep companionship that I've had and been fortunate enough to have with elders and teachers and friends have taught me a way of listening, so that as we bring in the totality of what it means to exist as a human in the multiplicity of nature and the cosmos, that we have a way to understand it. And this is where that indigenous piece really helps us to understand our place in things, what our real true place is in things. And then the horses, they just provided me an opportunity to deeply engage in the natural world that was very relational. I think trees do it too, but horses are, you've got 1,500 pounds of creature who is very much wedded to the wild in so many ways. No matter how they're trained, there's still a part of them that is very much in the wild. And to have a conversation, an ongoing conversation with a member of the wild, also allows for us as humans to understand our right place in the larger order of things. So that's why it wove all together. Mm-hmm. The last piece, contemplative wisdom, well, really, contemplative wisdom in its most simplistic form is all about being in alignment with the greater order of things. Deep presence, deep beingness. And so all these places, indigenous wisdom, neuroscience, equestrian sciences, and indigenous and contemplative wisdom, they all resonate into one place that has to do with where we belong, and from there, how we live. So that's why I brought all of those together. Yeah. Nice,
beautiful. And we'll go in a little more deeply on some of those elements. I want to pick up on a thread that you said early in your response, though, about these times. And I'm really curious. I remember when you got the call that from Sounds True that said, hey, would you write a book? You've been a writer for a long time. You've had a blog. Many people on this call probably have participated in your blog. But that was almost 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. and then takes about a year to write a book. So it was January when you submitted this finished book, right? It takes a while to gestate, and yet it's coming out now. You could not have known what 2020 would bring us.
No.
And yet this book feels so timely for these times. And I think, in fact, you told me that the publisher read the book. It was planned to be published in 2021. And they said, oh, no, we have to get this out now because this voice, this wisdom speaks so much to now. Can you speak a little bit to how this work is relevant for 2020, even when you didn't know 2020 was going to happen?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And when the pandemic and the racial dialogues were starting to happen and all this was sort of blowing up around March, April. I remember talking to the publisher and saying, oh no, there's so many more pages now that need to be written in this book to attend to what is happening. And it was really interesting to kind of relax that and spend some time with the book and realize that there's a timelessness to thriving, right? So if you look at the horse community, which is 56 million years old, 56 million years, as opposed to our earliest civilization is about 60,000 years. 56 million years, you have witnessed climate spikes, tectonic shifts, comets, pandemics, wars, every possible volcano eruptions, every possible scenario, and still you have survived. So there's a template in there somewhere around how to be in right relationship to the greater order of things. I'll just say that again because it's worth repeating. And that's as true, 5 million years ago as it was now. But the thing is that we have, as modern people, we've lost touch with so much of that ancient knowing and understanding and wisdom. And I'm not saying, let's do a throwback back to caveman times because that was so much better. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that we were designed to bring things along and leave behind what doesn't serve us, but keep things that does serve us, kind of like, right, any kind of metamorphosis. And yet somehow with industrialization and agriculture, we've left so much behind that is very important and very useful. So these basic principles of connection and peace and presence and care, all of these principles that the horses have taught me, but nature also has taught me, they're eternal. And they're eternal not as just a feel-good philosophy, they're eternal as a way of being so that we are no longer destroying ourselves and in destroying each other and destroying the environment, that we are finding other options that are much more inclusive of, air quotes, other. So, on a granular level, sure, the word pandemic isn't in the book, but on a deeply, on a framework about thriving, that's, I think, why this book is so pertinent for now.
Yeah, that's how it's very connected to the biomimicry world too. We often talk about life has 3.8 billion years of evolution that we can draw from. Horses have been around for 56 million. The human species, they think maybe the earliest traces are about 300,000 years ago. And you're talking about civilization as we know it, about 60,000. So there's a lot of deeper, more enduring wisdom. And when we tap into, when we as Janine Benyus likes to say, when we quiet our human cleverness and tap into some of these deeper aspects of thriving in the natural world, there's a lot. It's present for every time, including this time.
That's right. Present for every time. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's pick up on this horse piece a little bit because You know, I often tell people that you and I do the same kind of work, facilitation and coaching and gathering groups of people together, only you co-facilitate with horses.
I do.
So let's talk a little bit to this community. And I know many people here are from the EQUUS community. They're very familiar with this. Many people are from the biomimicry community, not so much. Let's talk a little bit about why horses are your mentor. You've started to talk about this, but let's go in a little deeper about for leadership. And just to say, you know, at BSI, we have kind of an ethic about not turning to a single species.
Yeah.
You know, biomimicry is about looking to the natural world and learning from nature and then applying it to human sustainability challenges. And in the social innovation space, we're very careful. We're not going to say, oh, let's be like the lions where the males lay around all day and the females do all the work, right? No, we're not lions and we're not horses.
No.
Yet I don't actually see you trying to mimic horses in your work. It's more about the quality of relationship and what you're learning from a different kind of relationship. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit. And how you share that relationship with other people.
Well, so, you know, the horses came in as I would say they volunteered themselves. I believe that we have many ambassadors from the natural world that show up and kind of reveal themselves in different ways as models, as teachers, as inspiration, you know, anything from slime mold to aspen groves to gorillas to, you know, incredible caterpillars. And so just for me, it just so happened to be that the horses came forward in that way. I used to be horse crazy. I have to say that's changed. They realigned my relationship with them very deliberately and became teachers. And what they taught, there's two aspects here. One is just their culture. And this isn't widely known in equestrian circles, but this just comes from my observing them for over 50 years in natural settings and also in domestic settings. They have a culture, and that culture revolves around 5 core principles or values. And those 5 core principles or values are safety, connection, peace, joy, and freedom. And the lead horse,
say those again slowly so people can really take that in.
Absolutely. Safety, connection, peace, joy, freedom. So as they're human, it is my responsibility, because I didn't ask to be in my paddock, you know, they are there because I brought them in. So it is my responsibility to ensure that I keep those 5 principles intact in their presence, in their life. To the degree that I can stay in alignment with them on their behalf, they are happier, we're more connected, everybody thrives. To the degree that I drop the ball on some of those pieces, it has a cost to them and to me. The lead horse is chosen not by kind of the dominant, gregarious gladiator stallion. That's just Hollywood at work. The lead horse is usually a mare. It's a matriarchy, usually. And she is selected based on her ability to hold those 5 principles intact. And she does so through care and presence. She doesn't do it through dominance and violence and might. So it really, you know, flies in the face of the way we normally think of leadership. But, you know, I'll take 56 million years of leadership over, you know, 60,000 years anytime. So care and presence is what holds and nurtures safety, connection, peace, joy, and freedom. So that was a teaching for me, because I noticed that while that is a system that's intact with the horse herd, that in almost any environment that is working well, those principles are intact. That is something they share. It's something that you see in other species as well. And so it was a teaching for me to bring that into my life. How can I create those conditions for the people that I care about, that I lead? What would my organization be like if safety, connection, peace, joy, and freedom were the main tenets from which we worked. So that's one kind of element. But I would say by far the most powerful teaching of the horse has been to listen, and to listen with my whole body, not just to them, but to the entire universe, the whole existence of the natural and the human world. I'll put them together because they belong together. And to listen differently, to listen from a different faculty in my body. And so the horses taught me to listen so that then I could learn from so much more in the natural world. They taught me to be a really good student, and they continue to teach me to be a really good student. So Toby and I laugh because I say, if someone asks me about horses one more time, I'm going to scream. She's like, but all your work is with horses. But like you say, with biomimicry, it's not about the horse. It's about what they point us to, which shows us a larger patterning and system out there that is far more intelligent than what we could ever come up with up here as humans. Right?
Yeah, in the biomimicry work, there's so much going on. There's so many cool inventions and emulations and people using it now to inspire policy and social change. And sometimes I feel like the most important thing we're doing is being outside together and listening and observing in a whole different way with a whole different quality of being.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that actually affects our nervous system, and it affects what we observe. And when we let go of our own ideas of it and are very, very present with what's right before us, we can bring something different into the world. And I imagine that being very, very present with a huge, alive, relational creature like that amplifies that experience.
That's right. That's exactly right. Because you are in the presence of a huge relational creature, anywhere between 800 pounds and 1,700 pounds. And if you're not listening, it's just not a good thing if you're not listening. Yeah. So they are, unlike trees, say, or bees, they've somehow, signed up for being highly relational. And if you're listening properly, in a teaching capacity. So we don't have a lot of active teachers from the natural world, really, that are that relational. Dogs and cats are not quite like that. Why? I don't really know. They're not animals of prey. I don't exactly know why that's the case. I suspect it's because they are herd animals, and as herd animals, they have a very simple binary. Either you are part of us or you are not part of us. And to be not part of them, you would have to be a predator, which you aren't when you step into their presence. And so if you're part of them, then it's incumbent upon them to teach you to be part of their system. Otherwise, you become part of the problem. So they're very active in kind of like, hey, being very present. Hey, you're acting like you're happy, but really you're sad. And they're very, very precise about that engagement.
So 56 million years of evolution as prey species, there's been a lot of learning inside the species around how to look out for one another.
Yeah.
How to collaborate, how to be a herd. And I think what you're saying is by being very quiet and present and open and listening, you begin to observe those dynamics in a different way, and you also are kind of welcomed into those dynamics in an experiential way.
Yes. Yeah, well said. And then taught, and sometimes taught, and like very clearly instructed.
You tell stories in your book about people that you've brought in to work with the horses, and transformations that have happened for them. Everyone from CEOs to actors to all kinds of different folks who then go back out into the world and bring a different kind of quality of being in a relational field back into their work.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say singularly, like if you could say one thing, one main shift, it would be that people leave the oppressive mindset, whether it's internal oppression or external or a mix of both, and unfurl themselves into a mindset that has much more to do with their connection to all, their oneness, their responsibility within that environment. It's a very fundamental shift that's both, it changes many habits that happen in their life, but also we get a lot of, especially male CEOs, crying in the arena because I think somewhere deep in their bones, they knew that the way they had been living their lives was not congruent with a greater purpose, right? And so they're relieved to know that they don't have to keep all that scaffolding up, all of that really intense, all those intense structures that just separate them from the rest of the world.
Yeah. Good. You just mentioned something about oppressive systems. I want to pull on that a little bit. We're friends and colleagues, and a lot of our conversation over these past couple of years, and especially this year, has been about being white women leaders, which we both are, in an inherently racist society, and talking about what we're learning and what is our responsibility about systems of oppression and how to address them. I know this is something you've been working on a lot, you've been writing about. How does your work, how does this book, how does your current thinking speak to that?
Wow, there's so many angles for that. So I think I want to name something that's kind of obvious too, because we talk about the indigenous pieces that are here in this book. And some of the pieces are from hours and hours of personal dialogue with a man named Uncle Bob Randall. He's a custodial elder of Uluru in Australia. And some of them are stories that have been freely shared, that are kind of out there in the world, and I've captured them on the pages. But what's a white girl doing? Sharing these stories, right? This is tricky territory, and Uncle Bob taught me a principle called Kanyini, which is loosely translated as unconditional love with responsibility. So I love that love and responsibility kind of coexist in that cosmology of his people, because there is a responsibility as an author, as a white woman leader, to take really good care of people and nature as much as possible. And I really struggled with how much do I share of what was freely given to me? How much do I just not? Uncle Bob specifically asked that us get out in the world because he felt like we were running out of time. And their culture is largely oral, and he was very insistent on that we not run out of time. He really wanted that these things get out. And what's interesting, so there's that element of just taking as much care as possible of that, those gifts that came my way that wanted to be handed on. But there's another piece too, and I'll see if I can describe this. The other day it occurred to me, we've got Amazon, the company, that's got personhood, but we don't have the Amazon jungle that has personhood. It's just kind of mind-blowing, right? And I believe that our next huge leap for us, if we're going to get through this time, is that nature have personhood. All, from the mitochondria to the little slime mold to the trees to the forest to the horses and the dogs and the cats, that they have personhood. Sadly, we white people have lost any cosmological connection with understanding our kinship with nature. And so a lot of these indigenous cosmologies and stories actually provide us with a little way that our hearts and minds can see that we are siblings to the trees, to the rocks, to the rivers, that we are not human and animal, that we are actually all in the same family, not as a really sweet philosophy, but like actually. Can you walk out into your backyard and know that that tree is your brother? Can you know it just like I know you are my friend? Can you know it in that cellular level? And so I believe that these stories and these teachings help us to knit back together our lost kinship with the natural world. It took millennia to grant personhood to all the people on earth. And we're, kind of barely, right? We don't have a millennia. We have maybe a decade now to grant personhood to the natural world. So just like the title of your book club suggests, Voices of Nature, who's going to speak for the animals? Who is going to speak for the forest? Who is going to listen to the forest, understand what they're saying, and speak on their behalf? And so, what's I think being required here is that we go beyond just stopping causing harm, by carbon tax or whatever, and we step into something that is so much more about right relationship to nature and doing good on behalf of nature as a fellow being. Like, we have to stop dehumanizing nature. I know that sounds funny, but when we dehumanize a tree, then we exploit the tree and we do terrible things. And we know what happens when we dehumanize people. And that mindset, I believe, has to shift. And so a deeper conversation on top of the really important racial conversations is the way that we also have racism towards nature, that we other nature, and that even if we love the mountains, there's a subtle way, if we're honest, that we are the observer rather than I am so much a part of this. And this mountain deserves a voice and a place in Congress and a place in policy. Like, that's some radical thinking, right?
Yeah, it is. I've often thought that in terms of human evolution, it's about expanding my sense of me.
Mm-hmm.
We go from me to we, and
Yes.
maybe at first it's my family or my community or my larger social identity group, whether it's my tribe or my heritage or my knitting club, or can I get a bigger sense of what's included in my sense of identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it tends to ebb and flow in relation to our survival needs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I'm sick, if my people are sick, if COVID is bearing down on my family, that's my we right now. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And as my health is okay, as my finances are okay, everybody has enough to eat, maybe I can think a little bigger to my community and my world, right? And we're learning how to see past the othering that we've been conditioned for in different human groups. And maybe, I think you're pointing to, it makes me think of, we're starting to confront white supremacy. Many people have been confronting it for a long time, but I think many white people are just waking up to white supremacy as something that's real.
Right.
The next step maybe is taking on and dismantling human supremacy.
Absolutely. And fast and quick.
Really fast.
Because as everything is falling apart, and the earth and the planet and the fires, and we see all the catastrophe before us now, it is really, really that time. Uncle Bob said something so poignant to me once. He said, we all belong together. The rock is my brother. And he was talking this way. And he said, and you know what? Nature misses us. And that just because I always, you know, as an environmentalist, I always kind of felt like we were sort of the virus, you know, we were just like the plague upon the earth. And he's like, no, nature misses us. Nature misses our company. We've separated ourselves. And I feel if I can relate to the little ant on the ground as my brother, then all that, if I can confront my human supremacy, then the natural order of things will be that my white supremacy can also be healed. Like it works up, right? So we're really being called to task now to not just stop with the humans, right?
Yeah.
So what would it be like, you know, to name the trees in your backyard? Like, why aren't they named Bob and Susan and Gwyneth or whatever? And how old are they, and what kind are they, and what kind of personality do they have? I mean, that would actually be a very powerful thing to do, is name your trees in your backyard and let your friends know you've named your trees. And have a radical cultural shift of ending human supremacy, right?
Yeah. And pay attention to the relationship that each of those trees has with each other, with the other organisms, with the birds, with the mycelial fungal network underneath. Yeah. Can I be welcomed into that community as a species?
And I would say you are welcomed. We either through our own shame, because of being ashamed of being human, you know, if you're really sensitive to nature, or just not really realizing it, but you are already welcomed. So can you feel that welcoming? And not only observe the networks and the relationships happening there as an observer, but like step in, feel your welcome from the trees, from the birds. And it's subtle, but it's there.
Interesting. You know, I was looking at
big paragraphs happening here in the chat.
I wish I could see them. I'm going to try again.
Would you like me to pause and read something?
I can't read the chat. Maybe share a couple themes you're seeing.
It's funny, my kids always name their plants. Maybe we can learn from their instincts. I have a relationship with a tree I call Hilda. I visit her every day for a year, and a greening formed from our cuddle. I kissed her and it turned green and lasted a year. Then a green heart formed above it as a communication back to me. She found her way to communicate back to me. It's stunning. I believe it. That is like, and it requires slowing down. And also the like a moment like that Lori just described, they happen. And then we go, no way. There's no way that there was a green heart on that. No way, right? But you just have to turn that part of your mind off. Yeah.
Okay, I want to be sure we get to, drum roll please. What does it mean? Flying lead change. 56 million years of wisdom for leading and living. What does that mean? What are we going to learn about a flying lead?
So it's a little play on words from an equestrian term. Flying lead change is an equestrian term, which is, and I'll way oversimplify this, but when four-legged animals are running, they tend to run on one side of their body or the other, because usually they're not really running in a straight line. They're running kind of in a bend this way or that way, right? And so in order to balance and hold themselves up, they will lead with that side of their body. So if they're on their right lead, they're going to lead with their right front leg and their right hind leg. If the topography changes suddenly and they have to change balance, then they have to change leads or they'll fall over. So in order to change leads, they have to leap off the ground in the air and midair, and imagine all this mass, right? 1,700 pounds. In midair, they change their legs so that when they come down, they're in a different pattern altogether. So it's a play on words because our topography is changing very radically. And we don't just need like a turn or shift or something. We need to like have some physics defying maneuver that is going to completely change the balance of things, right? And so this is why I use this term. And it's just like how you and I were speaking, not just oh, we're going to have carbon credit, carbon tax credits, but we're going to actually change how we relate to the forest. That's a flying leap change. That's a leap into the air, not knowing where we are, and boom, another way forward, right?
Cool. So let me see if I got that. They're running, and in horses' cases, they're galloping or running fast, right? They're running along a landscape. They're moving their whole 1,700 pounds in a certain direction. And then they're confronted with a whole different terrain. And in midair, being able to shift and lead in a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you're inviting, challenging, teaching your readers to do.
Yeah. A whole different change of heart, right? And I think the wonderful thing about this is, I don't think this is going to take time. It doesn't take time to just go into your yard and feel you're belonging to a tree. That can happen like that. So think what can happen just from that pivot point of mindset, of heart set.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So I encourage you out there in the world to be thinking about what aspects of your own life you're noticing you're in or approaching transition around. And how might you take that inspiration of everything we've been talking about, the different level of noticing, the different level of being in relationship with the larger field that holds you, the natural world, and those individual teachers, a horse, a tree, your dog, the bird that's showing up outside, the changing colors in the cottonwoods or the aspen or the maples around you. What kind of wisdom might you get from that? And what's the possibility? What's the call for a shift in midair? And what might that look like for you?
Do you want me to read some chat?
Yeah, read a little chat, although don't read everything because everybody else can see it, I think, not me. Actually, Kelly, let me do this. If you have a question, if there's somebody out there who has a particular question that you'd like Kelly or Kelly and me to answer, there is, I think you also have a place where you can ask Q&A. I can read those. So as the moderator, I feel some responsibility around that. So put something in the Q&A about what your question is. I see Lori writing, are you still holding retreats? I think that might be, I'll speak to it and you can speak to it too. We're in 2020. So this year retreats look kind of like this. But I do want to let y'all know that the retreats that Biomimicry for Social Innovation does, particularly the Living Systems Leadership retreats for women, we do have dates for next September in northern New Mexico. I think it's the third week in September. And you can check out the BSI website. In fact, Megan, maybe you can even put that in the chat. It's www.bio-sys.net. We have the dates for next year's Living Systems Leadership Workshop there. And thank you. And Kelly, you do programs too where you bring people together. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, our retreats tend to be private, one-on-one. And so we are doing them because we can do them outside, socially distanced with masks and things. So we have a sort of soft opening at EQUUS right now, and people are doing private retreats with us. Yeah.
And if you're intrigued by this work and you want to work with Kelly, do you mind if I tell just a few stories, not personal stories, but what I've learned about how Kelly does her work, and it just seems like an amazing opportunity, is often people will come to New Mexico, to Santa Fe, and spend a few days of deep personal introspective retreat. And each day there's some one-on-one time with Kelly and her herd. And some of the things that Kelly's been talking about, these practices about peace and joy and freedom and caring, those six practices become central to your experience. It's a deep dive into a really transformative opportunity. Rachel asks, what other inspirations from Uncle Bob are in the book? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Gosh, that's going to be the hardest one. Where do I pick from? Uncle Bob's presence is sort of woven throughout the book as a kind of, he sort of knits together the animal and the human. And yeah, there's Uncle Bob.
And Kelly as a young'un.
Yeah. That was many years ago. Other inspiration from Uncle Bob. There was a time when Uncle Bob picked me up from the airport. We had a lot of meetings together where I would go to Uluru and be with him, and then record his words and then transcribe them, and then come back and say, okay, these are the words I have, but this part doesn't make sense. Can you help me with this? And it was really intensive and wonderful. But one day I flew into Uluru and he picks me up and he doesn't say a word to me. And he puts me in the Jeep and we go driving very far away. And I'm flipping out because he's not talking to me. And we're going hours and hours out into the bush. And I'm telling you, my brain was like, he's mad at me. I've done something to offend him. Oh my God. Oh, now nobody knows where I am. Like, I went everywhere. And finally, after about, I don't know how long it was, 4 hours, something like that, everything kind of calmed down. And I just it's like the flywheel of my mind stopped. And I was just being, and he knew it. And he said, feels better, doesn't it? And his point was, because we talked about it later, but his point was that, you know, our modern, the way we're socialized is so kind of held up by all these social ways of being. And it props up a kind of sense of us socially that really has nothing to do with who we are. And one of the gifts of being with Uncle Bob was that I didn't have to be anybody at all. Anybody. I didn't have to know anything. I didn't have to talk if I didn't feel like it. I didn't have to anything. And that's real freedom. There was no expectation. There was no anything. Mm-hmm. And there was just, that was a deep teaching right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you for asking that, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
One other question in the Q&A. I'm not sure if this is a short answer, but I want to share it, that Stephanie Earle wrote. In my world seems to be closely surrounded. I seem to be closely surrounded by people who do want to make a positive difference in the world. Yet the world seems to be dominated by those whose difference is painful and damaging. How do we address that?
Can you ask that one more time? She's around people who do make a difference in the world, but
who want to make a positive difference, yet the world seems to be dominated by those whose difference is painful and damaging.
Okay. Quick story, it's in the book. Artemis is our lead mare in the herd, and she leads by care and presence, which means she is very zen and very quiet and very subtle. And we got a new horse named Brio who had been raised by stallions, and he's ginormous. And he came into the herd like Godzilla, just like, rah, and he's just like, and being all crazy and wild and mean and dominating and domineering. And Artemis, I thought, well, now what's Artemis going to do with this? And she just stayed the course like water on a stone. She just stayed in that integrity of care and presence, really subtly. And over the arc of time, in her case, it was about 3 months, she just made the whole ecosystem shift back into right order. It was not dramatic. All the horses were messed up around Brio, and it was just her staying the course. So it's not about volume, right? So there could be 1,000 people out there who are wanting to just damage the world and damage each other. And you holding the course, just stay the course, persevere, stay the course. Don't get distracted by all that's happening. Just stay the course.
Beautiful. And that's reminding me, Kelly, that this book is really about storytelling, about weaving these different threads. And it's also a practice manual that in the end of each chapter, you have something called a spiral point with journaling questions and exercises. And you do this beautifully. Like, there are some books that are very how-to and kind of a little too perky in that way for my personal taste. But I think you do it really elegantly. So folks, if you're intrigued by by what you're hearing from Kelly. If you want to know more, in fact, let's get into how you can support this work.
Yeah.
The book is really a practice guide, and you will learn a lot and gain a lot, and this can be your accompaniment through these times, this transformative accompaniment through these times. So please consider ordering this book. And again, peeling back the curtain on how book publishing works these days, this book is released October 13th. Our goal is pre-orders, because if we get enough pre-orders for Kelly before October 13th, then there's a whole big jump in how this book is featured in places like the New York Times and on Amazon and in other cases. So this is our kind of stealth way of addressing what Stephanie was talking about. People are out there trying to damage the world. We are going to be a force for good that overwhelms the counterforce. And part of how we do that is crowd birthing. So if you're interested in this, please support Kelly, support this work, order this book. And Megan, can you please put in the chat the link for ordering? We'll put it in the chat. You can also just go to Amazon and look up Flying Lead Change, and you'll get it.
Right. And flyingleadchange.com is a link, but I think Megan's got a link right to the order page. That'd be great. Thanks, Toby. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, consider working directly with Kelly. Consider coming to one of the Biomimicry for Social Innovation workshops. I see the chats just for like a second. For some reason, I can't open my chat window, but I saw something, Lori, that you were writing about the dates. Not sure what you said, sorry, but others can probably see it. We will be sending out this recording, and the recording does include the chat. Apologies, I meant to do this at the beginning, but if you don't, I'd like to ask for consent about having the chat shared. If for some reason you don't want what you've written in the chat to be shared with others, let us know, and we'll see if we can figure out a way to redact that.
We'll figure it out.
The other thing I meant to do at the start, apologies, Megan, is put up just a quick little poll to see how these streams of our two networks are coming together and other networks. So Megan, I'm going to ask you to put up that poll now. We'll just leave it up for a minute or so. That just asks you, what brought you here today? And hopefully, I don't know what's going on with my Zoom. I'm having Zoom issues, but hopefully others can see the multiple choices. And just
I can let you know as they come in here. It's fun. They're coming in. There's a lot of connection with Biomimicry for Social Innovation. Someone recommended it to me.
Great.
I'm excited about supporting women authors.
Awesome.
My connection with EQUUS. Awesome.
Great. Thank you. This helps us.
Yes. And 80% voted. So that's like a really great show up.
Okay, excellent. Couple other things. As I mentioned, this is a launch of a series. Thank you again, Kelly, for being the inspiration for this. We do have, I'm going to take this down so we can use our last couple minutes. We do have our next Voices of Nature author series scheduled. And many of you know Catherine Collins, dear friend of Biomimicry. She's the author of The Nature of Investing. Let me see if I have, and her new book is called Month of Sundays.
It's a great book.
Which is a great book. Catherine sends out, she's a finance person who is totally inspired by the natural world. And she sends out a blog every Sunday with these beautiful, deep pieces of wisdom inspired by nature. As Sayer says, it's so good. And all the profits of this book go to charities that she's involved in. So Catherine agreed to be part of our next conversation, which will be in about a month from now on November 12th. So that'll be at noon Mountain Time. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, and you know what, Toby? A portion of the proceeds for Flying Lead Change goes to Tewa Women United.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Tewa Women United is a nonprofit organization here for the Tewa speaking people. It's a community organization that helps with community outreach, local farming, midwifery, community healthcare, things like that. Yeah.
And the Tewa people are part of the indigenous community in northern New Mexico. And Kelly works closely and shares many of your treasures and opportunities with folks from Tewa Women United. Thank you. Just in closing, I want to be sure we end on time. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Toby, so much. This was so much fun.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you all.
Megan.
I think there were 60 some odd folks registered for this. Not everybody could be here in person. Many folks wanted to get the recording, so that will be sent out to everybody. Thanks for being part of this. Thank you to Novo Foundation for offering some money that can support some of the back end of this. And please take this wisdom. Order the book if you haven't yet. Order the book. Let's have a surge today.
Surge.
And we look forward to hearing more from and among and with this community.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. It was really wonderful to share space with you.
Beautiful.